Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the ThreeCameramen podcast. I am once again joined by Daniel,
Hello.
and we have a new addition to the podcast, Melissa.
Hello,
There you go.
I am the third cameraman. Welcome.
He's the cameraman. And today, as you can see by the title, we are going to be analysing Pulp Fiction, a 1994 film directed by Quentin Tarantino. Sort of one of the most popular indie films of all time, I think. I think it grossed like 200 million in the box office, and it's still equally as popular today. And it has a very solid place in pop culture, just not just to cinema, just generally. And it is a very dense film, so our chances of analysing everything is quite small, but we'll do our best. And I think I would like to start off with the man himself, Quentin Tarantino, one of the most, I think, popular directors ever. That sort of goes without saying. He has his own established style, and that style makes him into an auteur. And I guess one of the main factors of his style is his use of violence. He makes it into an aesthetic in his films. He tends to glorify it or make light of it, especially in the Marvin shooting scene in the car when Vincent accidentally shoots Marvin in the back of the head, or in the front of the head, but sort of we see it from the back. It's an incredibly gory scene that would usually in any other genre like a horror or a crime be a pretty pivotal moment that would have a lasting effect from the rest of the film. But it's a very split-second thing that is played off as a joke, and then it gets progressively funnier with their sort of having to resort to domestic life to try and get out of anything but domestic situation.
Oh, so like another example where you find violence funny then. I see.
God, I thought that was even a thing.
You often laugh at violence scenes during films.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's one of the scenes where you don't know whether to laugh or not.
It's good.
Exactly.
It is played off as a joke. It's got a much better. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a comedy, but
no, but it's like
certainly
Tarantino definitely wanted you to be on the verge of laughter.
Yeah, because the way it was edited together, it was like a smash cut of the back of the head exploding. It's sort of like if you like did close-ups of all the guts, not guts, like bits all over the car,
bits.
it would have added a lot more of a serious tone to the film. And
I mean,
does anyone have anything else to add to that sort of glorifying of violence?
I just kind of want to say, I mean, the two main characters, Vincent Vega and Jules, they did also kind of make it into a joke. They just they reacted the same way the audience probably reacted, even though they were meant to be the ones who did the deed, did the crime.
I mean, I think Vincent just said like, "Oh man, like I shot my back of the head." Like it was just like an everyday thing for him. It's not very nuanced or whatever. Always very nuanced.
Especially kind of effective at making these not uncomfortable scenes, but like when he kind of takes these situations, he kind of takes unusual situations and like runs with it as a joke sort of thing. So in a usual, like what it is kind of like a mashup of genres, because in a usual kind of thriller or like crime film, you'd have hitmen talking about hitmen stuff. What Tarantino does without overtly giving away exposition in all his dialogue, which he is very good at writing, he makes them talk about burgers, which is
Royale with cheese.
Definitely different to anything else anyone's done. And he has these he does it well because he has these kind of he still has moral implications to what they're talking about. So even when they kill the people eating the burgers, and then this guy shoots at them multiple times and misses everything, they're talking about like divine intervention, and that sort of thing. It kind of brings up the idea of morality.
I mean, it's also a testament to the popularity of the film, I would say, because this sort of spawned this subgenre of crime films not taking themselves too seriously, and it's one of copycats. And it's this sort of type of dialogue that doesn't fit with the scene. Is like almost like contrapuntal dialogue, if that's even a thing, where the dialogue does not fit the tone of the film. Yeah, it's become so popularized that we forget where it originated from, and it's from Tarantino, and it's lost its effect because people are misusing it, I would say. the whole point
Yeah.
of this was to sort of address how far gone they are as people to like view like taking someone's life as just an everyday thing. And that's when the theme of morality comes in. It really grounds the film a lot more than if it wasn't brought in. If we didn't have Jules to really ground the like the weight of what they're doing down. And it's really interesting how they explore morality in the rest of the film, with obviously, like I said, divine intervention and sort of like instance that like the film tends to have a sort of like magical quality, especially with the scene where Butch and Marcellus are discussing him throwing the fight. You sort of get this like omnipotence voiceover when we never see Marcellus's face. It's all like this like commanding voice gives very like fantastical quality to the scene almost. And we also like divine intervention. Just on chance, Jimmy is able to save them on a random morning, and they get away. And by chance, whenever Vince goes to the bathroom, something bad happens, and that ends up killing him in the end because he didn't believe in morality like Jules did, because Jules got away in the end, or we assume Jules got away.
Every time he goes to the
On that
bathroom,
note-
something bad happens.
On that note, we kind of see Butch as a hero more so than someone who also
Yeah.
killed multiple people, I would say, because he killed that guy that he was boxing with, completely just like wiped him off the face of the earth, and then kills what's his face, Vincent Vega, and then I'm pretty sure he shoots like katanas one of the guys in the basement, the rednecks. Yeah, I mean, and then we still see him as a hero, even though he's like a bit of a an a-hole to his girlfriend as well.
Yeah, I'll say that that's mainly because of he sort of relays what the spectator was thinking in every scene, because usually we see characters not really react that much to graphic violence, but then he is genuinely like frightened, genuinely scared, and his like I think we see him in the most pain, I would say, throughout, and that creates a lot of sympathy with the viewer and him, and therefore we sympathize with him more, and that's why he gets his fairy tale ending, like his golden Hollywood ending. I think that he's the only character who we really see do that.
Yeah, I mean, interesting enough, he the way Tarantino edits it is kind of, it's a very obviously non-linear fashion, and this film, or I kind of focus for this film is kind of how experimental it is. So I suppose Tarantino kind of popularizing that non-linear narrative, especially in an age where like big Hollywood studios, they wouldn't have like understood it, they wouldn't have got it, but apparently Miramax did, and that's what made them all the money. But talking about what Melissa was saying about how we see him as a protagonist, arguably Tarantino does something more interesting, and he doesn't clearly define a protagonist or an antagonist. Like there are people you root for because they have, as you were saying about earlier, the kind of comedic dialogue, but in reality these are hitmen that are trained to kill and stuff, and you shouldn't really be rooting for them, and it's kind of a more like a negotiated reading of the film.
And every single like go on.
No, you go.
Okay, in every single like episode of the film, you do kind of seem to sympathize and empathize with the character that is kind of portrayed as the main character in that episode.
100%.
I mean, he makes us see most of the characters as the main character through that like non-linear like putting together of the film, the narrative.
No, because I would say there's another instance where it's not, I wouldn't say it's self-reflexive, but it's almost meta. There's a scene in Jack Rabbit Slims where we see Vincent wandering through the diner, and he's trying to like point out all the references that he sees, much like and that sort of acts like as a sort of a surrogate for the viewer who's also trying to pick up all the references in the film. Tarantino is a cinephile at heart, and he's confessed that himself. He's a child of Golden Age of Hollywood, French New Wave, B movies, and he tried in every single one of his films. There's always like a shot that references like a French New Wave film, for example. And seeing Vincent trying to pick out all the references is the viewer trying to see how they can relate specific reference to something like I'll give an example. I think in 8½, there's a dancing scene between the two main characters, and which is weirdly very similar to Mia and Vincent's dancing in the diner scene.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you haven't seen 8½, you wouldn't pick up on that. But an active viewer who's also a cinephile might be seeing that correlation and therefore like the film more than someone else who hadn't.
I think that's kind of a good argument to say how Tarantino, whether Pulp Fiction is experimental or not, because although he presents original ideas and has obviously very original characters and dialogue, a lot of the film is self-referential. So as you mentioned with the dance scene, and also because he grew up in a video store and saw all these kind of rubbishy like was it B-roll movies or whatever.
70s B movies, yeah.
You have this kind of very gritty style throughout most of the film, and especially also the title card and everything is just taken from that sort of style. But it's a good argument as to whether it is experimental, because obviously it takes all these ideas and almost, as you were saying, like identically rips them off. But then can that be seen as original still, because he's doing something different with a hitman and a wife?
Isn't there the argument that like all artists steal? It's rarely a truly original idea to any degree.
I mean, I don't think anything it can be truly original anymore, because everything's been you like, unless it's like
it's subjective.
Yeah.
I mean, you can watch a Inception one up here if you want to learn more about kind of Nolan's style.
Yeah, good. Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, sorry. I was thinking he kind of likes to gain a bit of like a liking from the audience by including and kind of referencing some of the works of his of the actors in the film while they're in the film.
Yeah.
So like the dance scene that Mia and like Vega have, that's like a little nod to what's his name? John.
Saturday Night Fever.
John Travolta.
He was in Greece and he danced and he sung. So I think that is a bit of a reference, even though it is also a nod to Saturday Night Fever, because it is like a popular film. I would say everyone knows about it. I would say.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. So I just saying with John Travolta's character Vincent Vega, that's one of the good sort of way to talk about the film's representations, because it's simultaneously a very stereotypical and not stereotypical representation on, like, I guess what you would consider to be politically correct. Because I think it says that Vincent is an Italian American, and he's very stereotyped with these sort of ramblings he goes on of, like, you know, Amsterdam, McDonald's, and all that sort of stuff. But then in that case, that's very stereotypical. But there's also a case of like subversion of these stereotypes with different representation of women. Women who are in power typically take over the scene. Like Mia, for example, basically controls Vincent in that scene, and, like, you know. However, she wouldn't be in that scene if it wasn't for a man. Exactly. Every single woman in that film exists in the film because she's derived from a male character. Yeah. No, 100%. And another example would be Mia also overdoses because of Vincent's drugs in his pocket. If Vincent wasn't there, a man, then she wouldn't have overdosed. Also, Esmeralda, in the taxi driver, wouldn't be having this conversation or be even noticed without Butch. Anyone got any more examples of that?
The lady in the drug dealer's girlfriend.
Oh.
The guy who sold Vincent the heroin.
She's kind of the only, like, female figure in the film that's seen as more independent, because she
nags at him.
But the husband, she has a more of a say, whereas obviously Mia's a lot controlled by Marcellus, as you were saying. So
I feel like Mia does also have a say, but she's definitely she's not a typical, like, mobster's wife, but she does. I feel like she does abide by what he says. She goes out. She gets taken out to dinner by Vincent, she has a fun time like her husband told her to. A bit too much of a fun time, one might say. However,
yeah,
fun time nevertheless.
yeah, no, yeah, but so you have that element, but like she, as you said, she always sort of like tends to overpower men in her life and takes a lot of command.
It's not like femme fatale look that she has.
No, well, yeah, well that's the thing. I think if you're going with a stereotypical representation of like men and men in general, Mia is sort of the only woman who dresses up in a suit. She has like a shirt. She tends to dress more like a man. In we're talking about stereotypes.
More like Vince and Jules.
Yeah, and in that sense, and then therefore she has the most power in most scenes. Now that's obviously a huge stereotype, but is that what Tarantino is trying to imply, or is it just like because he thought it looked cool? It's sort of like this debate
is deliberate in a way, even though he is just like a bit of a nerd who decided to make films because he liked them. I think everything he does is deliberate, so I think he does have a little bit of a I think he did want to kind of get on the good side of the social justice warriors.
Yeah. We've touched upon Tarantino's sort of love of cinema, like you were just talking about. He has this fascination with the golden age of Hollywood. In the golden age of Hollywood, you have these crime films that often involve a lot of espionage, like suits, drugs, guns. Obviously, quite lots of return motifs, very serious tone, and it's also subverted with the dialogue in this film. But you also have B movies, which I think he had a sort of equal love for. It's very like tacky aesthetic, and in the film, he has like this like juxtaposition of a sophisticated yet sort of clunky style. Like everything's very grainy, like very rough around the edges, very like just like
it looks like it's cheap, low quality,
cheap, like a
cheap
Pulp Fiction, but and he's controlling it in such a way that these themes and styles seem so natural, and that's his influence in the golden age. You have the grungy side from the B movies.
It's a nod to 70s B movies that he grew up with.
Yeah.
Even though they were cheap and they were more independent. I mean, he's an independent filmmaker. He's just like giving a nod towards those filmmakers that came before him in a way. It's just incorporating like just intertextual stuff.
Definitely.
He's just incorporating because he just loves to incorporate pop culture into his little bubble of a Pulp Fiction world.
So as well as kind of experimental nature, Tarantino also he used a lot of kind of postmodern ideology. If you don't know postmodern, kind of where it's like subverts the mainstream like narrative conventions. So Tarantino does this by using the non-linear narrative and the not clearly defined antagonist or protagonist, as mentioned earlier. And it basically kind of explores these more modern beliefs. So what he does with this is he has obviously all the homages and like the irony that he uses.
It makes the characters a little bit more mystical, a little bit
more.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, as you said, postmodernism is like postmodernism is rejecting modernism by. So wait, so you're talking about how it subverts what, Daniel?
The genre conventions. What you'd expect from like
a crime film.
Yeah, I mean, like the stuff we talked about before, all the very meta references and the dialogue and the violence is all a rejection of what we have come to know, or what the audience at the time would have come to know and love from what.
Yeah, because you'd expect a hitman to have no sort of moral compass, but then when Jules goes on about this divine intervention, that's obviously a very kind of biblical thing in a quite inappropriate
and you also expect hitmen to have like no soul almost. You're like they're always like these like bodyguard sort of people who have a very like static front.
He's quite religious.
And but they're also talking about like Big Macs. Like I mean, it's something we've never really seen before.
Yeah.
And it's very, very like as I mentioned previously, it opened up this door to like this like almost new genre of comedy in a sense. Like this is something we would see like in like a Taika Waititi film would have been perceived as one-noted characters having a lot more dimension, and it all result from this film.
I was gonna pick up what you were saying earlier about kind of the characters getting a happy ending. So Tarantino obviously pieces together the film in a way that gives everyone a happy ending, even though they don't necessarily. So having Vince halfway through, like his death scene halfway through, is quite a surprise to the viewer. But then by the end, you have his kind of redemption as he walks out the diner, seemingly like unscathed, but you know that inevitably he will die. So that about wraps up for our podcast today of Pulp Fiction. We'll get some ratings from you guys as well if you want to go ahead. We'll start with Melissa.
Out of 10, out of 5,
10.
out of
10.
10, I would say an 8. I do like it a lot, and it is like one of the most iconic. It's like a cult film at this point.
Yeah.
But I feel like because I've seen it be done so many times, the original is so good, but there are many things to compare it to, like filmmakers after him who have done similar things, that I just think it is like the average Tarantino film for me. It is good. I like the music, I like the characters, I like dialogue, I like the themes. I do love the film, but it's just a bit
this was one of my favorite films ever, but I'll quickly give it I'll say a 9.5, because I've analysed so much now that it's sort of dimmed its quality, but it's still one of my favorite films ever. So
I'd give it a 9. Quality film, few dodgy scenes.
Also the dodgy scenes, but thanks for watching, though,
guys.
and we'll see you next time.
Bye.